My name is Spen Crowson. I'm an ex-RAF avionic technician. I started off joining up in '69 as a radar mechanic. Did my time at Cosford. Then my first posting was 617 Squadron at Scampton, where I was a little avionic mechanic on the flight line, working on IFF, TACAN, and other ancillary avionic systems, as well as marshalling the aircraft and going on detachments and having loads of fun. And it was a good way to grow up from being a teenager, because I was only 17 and a half at the time, and it stood me in good stead for later on. In '72, I then got offered a fitters course, so I disappeared off to Cosford again for a year. Came back, only this time back to Scampton, but then this time in the servicing bay, servicing equipments that I was removing on the flight line. I did about 6 months there before I went again back to Cosford for another session. Came back then as an NBS fitter, which is the navigation and bombing system, which is fitted to the Vs. This I did then right through '82 when I finally left, because I ended up at Marham when the Falklands kicked off. They sent me off to Marham as a specialist, and I ended up running the NBS bay at Marham up until I think it was about '86 when I diverted onto Tornadoes. So about 12 or so years on Vs, and to be quite honest, they were the best aircraft I worked on.
Oh, fantastic. So how did you end up working on Just Jane here?
Well, when I left the Air Force in '96, I did various jobs, working at Hunting's up at Cranwell, and then working on the flight simulator at Coningsby, where I produced some of the graphics that were being used. That got shut down when the F3 training finished, so I then went teaching. I became an engineering teacher, working at I think of the name of the school now. It was teaching at a pupil referral unit, which is a schooling system for children who require an alternative curriculum, shall we say. And I did that for about 10 years. And then I decided I'd take a break from that. And I then went part-time. While I was also doing that, I was running a small engineering business, which makes, in fact, it still does make, custom one-off parts for vintage classic motorcycle builders. And I've also made some parts for Just Jane here. But when I retired last summer, because we're 2019 now, so it was summer of 2018 when I retired. It's not summer 19, is it? Good grief, no. Spring
Not
of 19. We're here spring of 19. So it's the summer of 18 when I retired. And so during the summer months, it's all right, I can ride my motorcycle, very nice. But then the winter came along and I was wondering what to do. And I was suggested that I might like to offer my services to the Heritage Centre here. So I contacted Andrew, and he said, "Oh, you're avionics then?" I went, "Yes." He says, "Is that a bit like electrics?" I said, "Well, yeah, kind of." He said, "Oh, we haven't got an electrician on the aircraft." So I came in, spoke to the chief engineer, and he said, "You're just the kind of guy we need. When can you start?" So I've been here, so that was in October, and I've been here ever since.
Oh, brilliant. And how do you find it compared to sort of working on the V-bombers? I know you said that they were the best aircraft that you sort of worked on, but
yeah,
working on sort of like what's considered nowadays vintage, how do you find it? Is it a learning curve, or does it sort of come naturally?
Initially, getting back into if you like, the disciplines that's required for working back with an aircraft took a bit of time, because there's certain things you can do. It's not like working on your car. Things have to be in a set order. You've got to you can't just drop your tools on the floor and walk away, kind of thing. You look at some of the garages you go to these days, and that seems to be the way it goes. So you've got to be quite disciplined in your tool control and the way you work, and you've got to bit of wire off. You've got to pick it up rather than just leave it lying around. So that took a little bit of getting back into. But as for the technology, it's very similar to what was on the V's, the equipment I'm working on in there, which, as you saw earlier on, it's the pilot's analog instruments, and they were generic right through through the war, right through the 1950s, well into the 1960s. And I think it's only just recently that they've started to remove the analog backup instruments from aircraft and have them purely as glass cockpit, which to me is a retrograde step, because when your electricity fails, everything fails. So it's good to get back into working on a proper aeroplane, as I like to call it, and also the camaraderie of the engineers in there. It's just like being back at the little mech on the flight line. It's great fun.
Yeah, so it's a very solid team here then.
It is, yes. They're all. There's one or two civilian contractors. The rest are all ex-RAF.
Fantastic. And out of all of your time in the RAF, what was your sort of favourite stationing, and did you have any memory that kind of stands out as your sort of favourite moment?
I think the time I spent from 69 from the time I spent from 1970 when I first got posted to Scampton to 82 when I left, I think that was the best time overall. Working the bay was challenging on the old analog computers that were the navigation and bombing system. It's all cogs and wheels, and I think in the whole of something like about 36 line replacement units, there was only about 4 transistors. So it was developed in the late 50s, and it was very much of its time, and it was fantastic equipment to work on. Also, I met my wife there, so.
Oh, fantastic!
And we've been together ever since.
Oh, was she serving as well?
She was the secretary in the bay.
Oh wow!
She used to write out all the job cards.
Fantastic. So it really changed your life then?
It did, yes.